Good morning, world.
Good morning.
Today we're going to talk about the movie Hillbilly Elegy, and if you haven't seen it, go on Netflix. It's a Ron Howard movie based on a true story. And we're going to talk about that and the disconnect between the critics and the general public.
Along with that, we're going to add a new segment to our videos. We're going to address comments that were made in prior videos. I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian, and this is Cedric and Brian. All right, so I first heard of this movie, Hillbilly Elegy, when I heard an interview with the author and creator, and it's his memoirs, actually. It's about his life story growing up, of a gentleman by the name of JD Vance, who ended up coming originally, his family's from Kentucky, moved to Middletown, Ohio, and he ended up being able to go to Yale Law.
Yes.
So that's how I found out about this. If you get a chance, Ben Shapiro did a great interview with him this past Sunday.
Right.
So, and then Cedric had already seen the movie.
I had seen the movie. It's a good movie. It's one of those classic Horatio Alger rags to riches type story. Well, I don't want to say riches, but it's the classic movie of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, getting to work, sweat equity, and making a go out of a very terrible situation in which he lived in. And Brian and I are going to cover that just a little bit now in our review of the movie.
Yeah, and before we hit that, the thing that I found interesting, and when I say interesting, I mean not interesting because it's happened many times, but if you look on Rotten Tomatoes and you look in critics in general, sometimes you see this disconnect between the critics and the general audience. Well, the critics, and I have it here on my phone, the critics gave it 26% on the tomato meter. Of Rotten Tomatoes, and the audience gave it 85. So I have my theories. I don't know what your theories are. Somebody made a comment accusing us of making a blank statement about the left.
Right.
And then we have to look at ourselves. But I'll just make this point. So this movie is about a white, what you would call, in some cases people would call white trash.
Right.
Poor white.
Redneck,
Hillbilly, the name of the movie is Hillbilly. How he pulled himself up, basically, from poor trash, his mother was a junkie, to Yale Law. And, they want to say, and I'm going to say it, the left, and it is a generalization, again, it's not everybody on the left, that they don't like that story about pulling them up by the bootstraps. So then Cedric brought up a movie, and I wanted to see what they thought of this, and this was the one, Pursuit of Happiness. So that was another one, but Will Smith was the character.
Will Smith was in it.
Another true story about a black gentleman back in, was it the 70s?
Yes.
Yeah. And he made a success of himself, and he taught that to his child throughout this movie, and the critics only gave that on Rotten Tomatoes 67%. But again, the general public, 87%. Yeah,
that's what you can't trust the experts. And that movie with Will Smith in Pursuit of Happiness, it was a great movie. I think the only reason, and again, I'm generalization here, that the Rotten Tomatoes gave it as high a score as they did is because the main character, Will Smith, was black. Had it been Ben Affleck or someone like that, that score probably would have been a lot lower.
Yeah, and so this story is similar to that, except for it happens to be a poor white guy with a junkie mother. Who raised him out by the bootstraps. Instead of 67%, they got 25% or 26% on the tomato meter.
Right.
And before we dive into the movie, I had another movie that you would consider on the right, Passion of the Christ. Again, by somebody that the left, most on the left, I hate to use this blanket statement.
Right.
Obviously, they don't like Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson did say some questionable things when he was drunk, and whether he believes those things or not, I don't know. I can separate that. The reason I can watch movies anyway, I can separate the people from the movie in a lot of cases. Otherwise, it'd be hard to watch anything.
Oh yeah.
But they gave that only 49%. The public gave that 80%.
It's a great movie.
So, and then the last point I'm going to make, because we're going to show this the opposite way. So I don't know if you know who Hannah Gadsby is. So she's a very, I mean, I'm going to use the term woke, a very woke comedian. So right off the bat, she's not funny.
I think we mentioned her in our
We did.
comedy video.
We did.
How cancel culture cancels comedy.
So she did a special called Hannah Gadsby Nanette. The tomato meters gave her 100%. Have you ever heard of anything getting 100%?
That's perfection.
I mean, we love Braveheart, but even the general public didn't give it 100%. So tomato meter 100% for her special. General audience 26%.
Right.
So I tend to go on Rotten Tomatoes. I completely ignore what the critics say.
Right.
And I usually just go what the public
What
says.
do people like?
Because I don't know what they're looking for. I think they're just looking for a certain narrative, and that's the reason why they panned Hillbilly Elegy. Mm-hmm. It doesn't fit the narrative. But this Hannah Gadsby, I remember that from our old episode. It just shows you. I mean, if you've tried to watch that, I don't care if you're a fan of comedy, if you hate comedy. Most of it is just unfunny and just.
Well, we talked about the term last time. They like to invoke clapter. Not laughter. They like to make these political statements that invoke clapping and applause from the audience and saying, "Oh yes, you're right. That's a great point." But it's not funny.
Yeah. So, anyways, I went over that. Now we'll kind of give you kind of our review of the movie because I liked it. And I'll have to admit, before Cedric says what he did, I liked it. I wasn't blown away by it.
Right.
I liked the story. It was a little slow for me at times.
It was slow. Yeah. It was slow. But the main, and I love these type of movies. The movie was what I called it focused on family, and it really went over generalization struggles from one generation to the next. And it starts Glen Close as the matriarch of this family that Brian talked about in Kentucky. They call her nickname was Mama. No, Mima.
Was it Mima or Mama?
Mama. It's M-A-M-A-W.
I think it's Mama.
Mama.
Or Mama.
Mama.
Yeah, that's the way you pronounce it in the movie.
Mama.
And that might be how people in Kentucky say that.
Yeah, Mama.
Grandma.
Yes.
Mama.
She is the matriarch of this family, Kentucky, huge family. And there's a great scene where they, before they get in the car or the cars and migrate to Ohio, they get in front of the house, it looks like a cabin, and they say, okay, let's take a family picture. And it's like 20, 30 people and in front of this house, everybody from mom to grandkids to uncles to everybody. And so they migrate to Ohio. Along with Mama, she's married to Papa.
Mama.
Let me get that right.
Papa.
Mama and Papa. And they obviously have their daughter. And what's her name? Her name
Amy Adams.
Amy Adams.
Yes.
And the character's Beverly.
Okay.
And again, struggles from one generation to the next. Mama didn't do much. Pass that down to Bev. She didn't do much. And it talks about the character JD. He kind of breaks that generalization hold, that stranglehold, and makes something of himself based on the love and the affection that he gets from the matriarch. Mama.
Yeah, because there was a scene in it where he started to give up because his mom was just hooking up with different guys. She was doing drugs, couldn't hold a job down. So he started to hang out in his teenage years with kids that weren't the best kids to hang out with. They started doing drugs, drinking young. And then Mama came into the scene and basically said, yeah, find some new friends.
Find some decent friends.
I don't want new friends.
Well, then you're not going to have any.
You can't tell me who I can hang out with. You're not my mom.
I'm all you got. Now get out, before I cancel your birth certificate. Get out and get that calculator, or don't bother getting back in. You're damn lucky that thing ain't busted. If I weren't crippled, I'd get out of this car right now and I'd walk around and I'd smack your head and your ass together.
Why do you even want me?
Who said I wanted you?
I really hate you, you know that?
I don't care you hate me. I ain't in it for popularity.
Because he complained, well, I'm not going to have any friends. She goes, that's all right.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of cool to me because you kind of see a lot in the Tyler Perry movies. He kind of plays that matriarch character, Medea. And I know with my family growing up in the South, that grandma, she was well respected. They always called him Big Mama. It was called Big Mama. She was the one that you could mess up, you could do all this. But when Big Mama said no or she said yes and put her foot down, that was it. Discussion was over, and she was the glue that held that family together.
Yeah, so this kid, JD Vance, who the story is about, went from getting D's. They would show him getting D's in his class, and the teacher said, I know you can do better. And then when he went to live with Mama and got out of his mother's house, he applied himself. He ended up getting the best grade in his class the next time. His grandmother showed that she was interested in this and how great of a job, where the mother just said, you know what, she could care less. So he developed this sense of pride in himself that he didn't have. And from there, he parlayed that into making it into, he went to the Ohio State.
Yes.
And then from there, he went to Yale Law.
Yale Law School.
Yeah.
Yep. But I think Mama, she got pregnant at 13, gave birth to the mom, and she got pregnant at 18 and had JD.
Yeah.
And
she had a daughter.
She had a daughter also.
So JD has an older sister.
And there's a fight in the scene where the mom is talking to Lindsay, the daughter, and said, "You're going to get pregnant. It's just what we do around here." And I think the daughter said something along the lines of, "Well, no, I'm not stupid like you." And then she got slapped. And you see that mom is very verbally and physically abusive, not only to the daughter, but to JD in the movie.
Yes.
And so it's another thing they have to combat and fight against during the entire movie.
So again, it's a story about real America, stripped down. It's not the Hollywood version. What goes on in these smaller towns and these towns that are failing, like Middletown, Ohio, where they moved to. It was an industrial place when we had industrial work down there, and then it just shows how those towns die.
Yeah.
And if you can afford to leave, you leave. But if you can't, you just stick it out.
And that's a good point they brought, because like they say, some people, they just don't leave. I mean, I heard a stat, and now if you can pull it up, Brian, there's a stat that say most people who go to college, they don't really matriculate too much further than an hour from where they went to school.
Yeah.
But although there's no work there, people just stay there.
Yeah, and then they just live in poverty. Because some people, and you hear this a lot from the right and left, it's, when a town dies, well, why don't you just leave? Or why don't you find a job somewhere else? Well, some people, they're so attached, or they don't feel they have the resources to be able to do that.
Right.
So they just try to stick it out, and then they end up working in, small retail in a poor town. But it was good. So, I mean, again, it was Ron Howard directed it. And, he has some good movies.
Great movies.
Some sleepers.
Well, I was telling a friend of mine, real quick, I'll those in there. Ron Howard. For those of you who are watching this probably know this. I was telling a friend of mine about this yesterday, and I said, Opie from the Andy Griffin Show. She goes, who? I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
And then Happy Days.
Opie, and then Richie Cunningham in Happy Days.
Yeah.
And he was one of those smart people in Hollywood that said, you know what, I'm not going to make a career in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I'm going to go behind the camera and do it there.
Because he doesn't have Hollywood good looks. He's a funny-looking little... Who's the comic strip guy? The Alfred E. Newman? I mean, he's that look, or Howdy Doody.
Right.
So he was smart. He said, I'm going to do behind the scenes. And you know who else did that? From the same lot. So there was a spin-off to Happy Days was Laverne and Shirley.
Laverne and Shirley.
And the one who played Laverne,
Penny
Marshall, she became a great director and producer also because, again, they weren't the typical Hollywood-looking people, but they sure made good movies after.
And we may wind this up soon, but I just want to talk one more thing that really struck me about how this movie really emphasized family is that when JD went off to Yale Law School, he was invited to this fancy dinner. And he was looking for a summer internship. I don't want to give away too much of the movie, but he's sitting with these people who, he was basically a fish out of water. He was around people he had never been around before.
Old money people.
Old money. Yeah, and they're talking, and he says, well, where are you from? He said, well, I'm originally from Kentucky, and then moved to Ohio, and things like that. And one guy, and the guy he's going to interview with, made a comment like, well, what's it like going back there? It must be weird to be around all those rednecks. And that's when his total demeanor changed. He said, you know what? I don't care who you are. You're not going to talk about my family. He goes, we don't use that term. They're not rednecks. And you've been in those situations where you say something or something's done, kind of takes the air out of the conversation. It's like, uh-oh, I messed up. But that just shows how much family meant to him. Like, they were rednecks, and they were, can I say poor white trash?
Poor white trash and broken family. Obviously, he loved his mother, but she was broken.
Right. And he had to make a decision. We're telling too much of the movie. He had to make a decision where he had to, forego the interview and go take care of his mom because family was the crux of everything. It was important to take care of family.
But another thing that Ron Howard put in the scene, which was good, and JD Vance, when he was talking to Ben Shapiro, even said he sat at this table with all of these people from old money. So Yale is like Harvard. It's the Ivy League school. So most of the kids that go there, come from these families that were raised with servants and all that stuff. I mean, it's just the higher.
Right.
So he sat down and there was like 3 forks and 5 spoons and stuff, and he's like, I don't know what spoon to even use on this. So he calls his girlfriend on the phone, who is an Indian American, who she gave him a little antidote on how to figure out how to use it. So watch the movie, just because that antidote I hadn't seen before. I don't know if you ever saw that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Oh, you've seen? I've never seen it.
Which yeah,
with the hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gotta watch
it was a funny scene. It was a funny scene. Do yourself a favor. It would have been released at the movie theaters. You would have had to shell out, $15 to watch it. If you have Netflix, you can watch it for free. It's definitely worth the hour and a half or 2 hours, however long it is.
Easily.
Again, it is a American lift yourself up by the bootstraps. Yeah. And one of the things he mentions in there, and this is and I'm going to use that blanket term again, left. And I don't lump left with Democrats or liberals. I think there's such a huge gap between the left and Democrats and liberals. I don't make that point enough. So when we say the left, we're not talking about Democrats. We're not talking about liberals. We're talking about people that that are so far on the left, like we did a movie or a video on what are white people superior at. That whole premise is just set up by the left. Again, it's not set up by liberals. In fact, a lot of the people we watch on YouTube are liberals. They just happen to be liberals that move to the right. For those of you that are going to say, why are you lumping everybody together? I'm not. And I have a lot of friends that were anti-Trump. They've been Democrats their whole life, but they are definitely not left-wing. They still believe in that American spirit.
Right.
Unfortunately for them, that their party has happened to be moving left, not center. That's the only point I wanted to make. So the next thing we're going to do, Cedric, you found a comment from one of our last videos. So we are going to, but before we go to that, again, like I mentioned before, watch Hillbilly Elegy.
Okay, we're going to, me and Brian said we're going to do something new here because thanks to you guys, by the time this video comes out, we're speaking this in advance, we should have well over 2,000 subscribers on our little YouTube channel that we started about, 11 months ago. Didn't think it would hit that. We actually, I'll give you a little insight. We had set a goal this year to hit 1,000 subscribers. So if we hit 1,000, we're doing okay. By the time you guys watch this video, we should easily be at 2,000. So thank you for that.
And we're getting plenty of comments now. And I told Cedric, we got our first thumbs down, way back when, I think with our cultural appropriation video or something. I said, we finally made it.
Yes.
You don't make it until you get thumbs down. Well, the one we're going to talk about now, I think we're up to 11 thumbs down.
Oh, yeah, that's when you know you're...
And 200 and something thumbs up, which is good, and over 8,000 views, so...
Yeah, because it's hard when you do... Not hard, when you do something like this, and like I've always said before, you have to really have conviction in what you're saying and what you believe in, because it's bound to get challenged. And Brian just talked about how the review we just did of a video called What Are White People Superior At? And they interviewed 100 black people. And Brian just brought up the point. We believe those 100 black people were people who were on the far left. And we're not saying that all black people feel this way. The whole point, if you guys haven't seen that video, it has over 8,000 views now. The whole point of that video was we're talking about the hypocrisy that they were to take 100 black people and ask them the question, what are white people superior at? And we were just saying, had the roles been reversed, and they'd taken 100 white people and said, what are black people superior at? And Brian, we talked about it.
Laughed at it or said, oh.
Yeah. What if, and I can
watermelon,
say it's watermelon and fried chicken and jumping high. We said the whole point of that video was the hypocrisy. So we weren't saying that all black people feel that way. So this one...
In fact, before he gets to that, the very last comment they used, and I think they used this just so they could say that it wasn't all on the left, they had one lady at the end that said, white people aren't superior at anything, which is a good response, because if somebody asked me, I would say some black people are superior at this, some white people are superior at this. It's individual. We always go back to the individual. Watch that video and you'll see our commentary on this. But here's how somebody responded to us making that video.
And this one just simply, the subscriber's name is, not a subscriber, it's the viewer, Jorgen. And he addressed Brian and I after that video, and he says, and he's addressing Brian and I, just the fact that you happily apply this to the entire political left as a blanket statement made me realize you do the exact same thing you accuse them of doing. Perpetuate divisiveness. A little self-awareness might be in order. Jordan, thank you. because we, like Brian said before we started this one, we have to be aware of what we're saying out there. And we just kind of answered the question already. We didn't say the entire liberal party. We said those who are on the far left, and they made some statements that wouldn't be taken if the roles were reversed.
Yeah, and we were more pointing out the hypocrisy of the fact that they can put that out. YouTube doesn't take it down. It's actually praised. Whereas, like Cedric said, if you reverse those roles, it would be hate speech. It would be taken down, and at the very least, you would have a warning on the bottom that talks about this has been fact checked or something.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just so silly. This whole age of censorship that we're living in, and the censorship seems to only go on, and it may go both ways, but for the vast majority, it's only on one side.
Right. And perhaps Brian should have a disclaimer when we do our videos going forth, because, and I mentioned this in one video before, it's like every time you use absolutes like all or never, most of 99.99% of the time, you're going to be wrong. So when we talk about a group of people, we're not saying all of these people. We're making a general statement about the left. And I think you brought up a good point. You said most people on the left, not all, so don't send me any hate comments. Most people on the left were the ones who were rioting and looting and pillaging and setting fire. And most people on the right weren't.
We're waving flags. And having peaceful protests. That's right. So it's a little side rant. Sorry, we had to do that.
Okay. Go make sure you get your family together, gather around the sofa, and make sure you watch Hillbilly Elegy. It's a great movie. It's a great family movie. And I think at the end, I want to encourage all of you to do something that was in the tagline, no matter how dysfunctional your family may be. And if there's no dysfunctional members in your family, you're it.
Good luck.
You're the one. Because if you can't see any dysfunctional ones, you're it.
Yeah, exactly.
But make sure you love your family. I just love the message that movie sent. Love your family, come together, be one, support each other. But in lieu of that, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you ring that bell, and make sure you share this video with everyone you know. Until next time, I'm Cedric.
And I'm Brian. We'll see you later.